Hello world, it's me, Dr. Keith, the VR Doctor, back after a short break to take us into the world of clinical virtual reality again. And today I'm standing in Machu Picchu to talk to you about virtual reality as a digital drug, and what properties of virtual reality might be considered class effects, and what might be specific to the experience. And I'm going to illustrate this by my experience over the last weekend at the NHS Hack Day, going from pitch to patient in 48 hours with CALMO. So what do I mean when I'm talking about class effect and specific effects? Well, these are concepts that come from the world of pharmacology and medicine. And a class effect is when you consider different drugs, whether they look the same in terms of physical sense, they have similar molecular structure, or whether they have a similar effect on the body, or whether they have a similar chemical effect down the line. So a good example of that might be an antibiotic. That's a class of group. And then you have subclasses like penicillins because they have similar physical structures. And they may have effects on the body that are based on that structure, and they're shared across the way. But then there's very specific different uses of different drugs. So some antibiotics may work on some infections compared to the others. So that's a class effect, something that is shared across a lot of these drugs, and then specific effects that's unique to that one. Now, it's useful to understand this because I think virtual reality, when you think of it in its second way, which is its ability to heal as a novel therapy, you start to think about, well, what is it about virtual reality that might be considered a class effect? What is a common feature? And when people talk about that, they're often talking about that sense of immersion, that sense of presence. And for a lot of the use cases, for example, in pain reduction and anxiety reduction, it's a sense of distraction. So the question is whether virtual reality experiences, all in common, will have that class effect. But then from person to person, there may be some specifics that might help them more or less. And a good example of that might be a person who is looking to relax or be distracted away from a painful procedure. Now, I've spoken to a lot of people. I've spoken to a lot of patients about this, and some people find relaxing on a beach to be to their liking, and some other people like to relax in a forest. And that comes down to the specifics of the encounter. So you have class effects, and then you have specific effects. But I think you can go a little bit deeper than that as well. And I think you can get to this third stage, which is a very specific or precision effect. Now, there's a whole movement in medicine called precision medicine, which looks at a person's genomics and looks at their genetic setup, and you can tailor drugs specifically to a single individual. And of course, that's also possible in virtual reality too. You can create a completely custom or bespoke environment, either by taking a tailored environment and customizing it further. So here I am today in a 360 picture of Machu Picchu. So let's use that example. A class effect might be being in virtual reality on its own. And then the next one might be, well, I like mountains, so I've got a nice mountain scene. But then maybe you go down to the very specifics of this. I feel most relaxed if there is clouds in the sky or if there is blue sky, okay? And then there's a final layer underneath all of that. And that layer underneath all of that is about reactivity of the person. So we know that virtual reality can be defined by an immersion in an environment and the person's interactions with it. Well, you can use that. You can have a dynamic environment. It's less easy to do with a 360 photo, but it's easier to do in virtual reality. So a good example of that might be, I might be wearing a wearable which measures my heart rate, and then as my heart rate rises or falls, this environment changes around me to give a biofeedback, which can in turn focus the experience and the clinical effect of virtual reality. Now, there are some research papers coming out now looking specifically at this. I understand that the work of people using virtual reality for acute pain relief have found that a generic experience can be effective, but a specific personalized experience can increase the pain relief. And that's a very interesting concept, because then we move into the situation of, well, how do we create these specific situations? Do we have just one experience for everyone? Or do we have an experience that can be customized to get it a little bit more focused? Or do we find a way of individually tailoring things, either the patient tailoring it for themselves, a clinician tailoring it for themselves, or a virtualist working between the two to try and find that specific encounter and bolting in the feedback. Interesting times. So how can I illustrate this? Well, I did say at the top that I went to an NHS Hack Day this last weekend. So what is NHS Hack Day? Well, I'm going to bring up my props at this point and show you this. Ta-da! NHS Hack Day, as shown by this little sticker here, is in its 19th episode now, or 19th event. It is Geeks Who Love the NHS. It's a hacking event where people come together and use technology to solve problems. And in this particular last weekend in Cardiff, I went along to pitch what I hoped to be, or pitch a problem that I would like solved. Namely, I've been using this headset in my practice to try and treat patients that have dressing changes. The trouble is that a lot of the experiences rely on the person being upright. And of course, if you're having a dressing change, you may not be upright. You might be on your front, or you might be on your side. And in those circumstances, the experiences that you generally get given aren't appropriate. So I was looking for someone to help me fix that. Thing is, and the nature of NHS Hack Days is you often go in there and someone pitches something much better. And this was the case last weekend. A character called James Dornan stood up right at the very start and talked about using virtual reality as a way of reducing pain for people having blood samples. Now, in the NHS, every year, 800 million pathology tests are ordered, and that's 300,000 patients per working day having some kind of pathology, the majority of which can be blood tests. And when you understand that between 3 and 10% of people have some form of needle phobia or aversion to needles, also known as belenophobia, that's a lot of folk having a lot of distress, and it can cause temporary effects, but it can also cause lifelong problems. People can avoid having their diseases monitored. People can avoid having immunizations. This is serious stuff. So we had this simple problem, and we came together as a team. Now here I get a chance to show you a lovely picture of us all together. So if you hold with me a moment, I'll bring this down, and I will introduce you to everyone. Yes. This is Team CALMO. Here we go. Let's go around. Right. We have Paul Peacock. We have Matthew Shorten. We have Henry Atkinson. We have, hey, there's Natalie Cito. And then up here, who's that bugger? Oh, that's me up there. Let's turn around here and see. We've got Laura Tan. We've got James Dornan. He's the man that made the pitch. And here we got Adam Groom, musician extraordinaire. Yes, these were all the people in my team. Now, if I just switch it from this rather intense view to something of everyone working away in the background. Oh gosh, it's me in the background there again with my Superman top. Why don't I pinch myself around here? You know what? I think I'm going to head back up to Machu Picchu because the view was so lovely. But I can put this up in the background. So that was our team. And over the course of the sort of 26 hours from 9 a.m., from about 11 a.m. on the Saturday morning when we started to get things together through to about 1 o'clock, nearly 2 o'clock on the Sunday, we developed a product called CALMO. And CALMO uses some of the principles that we already know about in virtual reality. And these are, in some ways, class effects. So what do we have here? We've got some trials. First of all, this is about the effectiveness of virtual reality intervention to minimize pediatric stress and pain intensity during venipuncture or blood sampling. Let's put this up here and we'll have a look in the background. Hopefully you can read some of that, but if you can't, I'll read it for you. Basically, this was a study that was using Oculus Rift, which is a connected form of virtual reality, and getting people to do this multiple object tracking, so they're having to focus quite closely to remember and simultaneously track moving targets. They were looking at a pediatric nephrology clinic. That is a kidney medicine, renal medicine clinic where they have blood samples, and they have to have them done quite frequently. And what this study showed is, let's have a look there and see, how many people did they have? They had 38 people in this particular trial, and they had significantly lower pain intensity, and also significantly lower stress levels too. So we know that virtual reality can work in this area. And then the second study, which I'll bring up here in the background, wondering about whether virtual reality is ready for the prime time. Well, I certainly think so. And here they were looking again virtual reality against SOC, that's standard of care, that's the current best practice. And what they found that it significantly reduced acute procedural pain and anxiety compared with the standard of pain. That's impressive stuff. Again, what is the class effect? What is simply about putting a person in virtual reality versus the specifics of this? So let's pop that back down here. So how did the team work over the weekend? Well, we spoke to each other and we spoke to some patients. In this case, it was Veena Patel, who had an aversion to having blood tests. And we tried to work out the sort of things that might work. So we had the class effect of being inside virtual reality and being distracted. And we then worked on those things that might augment that a little bit. So we had a neutral dark space. We compiled this using Unity, and then we used something called the box breathing technique. And the box breathing technique is a version of controlled breathing where a person will breathe in through their nose for the count of 4, hold for 4, breathe out for the count of 4 through their mouth, and then hold for 4. In, hold, out, hold, and repeat. And that slow breathing helps to relax the body and relax the mind, lower the heart rate, and reduce anxiety levels. So you have a breathing technique, and you have distraction, and you have the music in the background. Now, you remember you showed you Adam? Adam was there. Adam created a wonderful piece of music to go along with this. And when all was synchronized together, it was delivered in a quick and easy to use package because we were thinking specifically about how this would be used in a clinic setting. And we presented to everyone, and we're very lucky to have been made it into the top 3 of that group, which is awesome. And then just before 9 a.m. on Monday morning, I was able to use it with one of my patients in my own practice to help reduce anxiety. And he described it as feeling like he'd gone on a holiday, as if he'd visited the deck of Voyager, because yes, he was a trekker, and there's something very beautiful about that. So, from pitch to patient, 48 hours, we were looking at the specifics of virtual reality and that experience. How could that deepen things? And we've spoken to people since, and they say, well, you know, I'd like to be on a beach. I'd like to be in a field. Now, what we're looking to do is abstract that and have several different experiences in CALMO so the patient can choose that. And then we might look and see if having the generic experience is better or worse than a specific experience, from class effect to specific effect. Already you have people like Applied VR and Firsthand using biofeedback to try and tailor it even further into that kind of precision situation. And then in the future, we might have clinicians like me and other virtualists coming in with the patient, co-creating a space and working together. So it's interesting and exciting times. I hope you understand a little bit more about the idea of class versus specific versus tailored and precision versus biofeedback effects inside environmental virtual reality. And maybe start you thinking a little bit about how you might use that in your clinical practice. So until next time, I'm going to put the picture of the team up here. And if you'd like to find more about this, I actually wrote a blog post. It's on my website. The details should be just here for you. You can also follow me on Twitter. I'm at Keith Grimes or at the VR Doctor. And you can also join VR Doctors on Facebook. That's www.facebook.com/groups/VRDocs. So with that, I'm going to get rid of all this screen nonsense and get back to enjoying the view at Machu Picchu. And maybe trying to avoid the noise of these people up here. They were quite quiet, but I don't know, they're starting to get a bit fractious. So until next time, take care and keep thinking VR.